My brother, this is something he's been waiting for, and he's probably spent more time thinking about it. For the rest of us, it's more a question of, okay, we have to shift the way we support.
Princess Anne officially forced and expelled Queen Camilla from Clarence House through the servants' side entrance. That very night, King Charles III completely collapsed, kneeling before Princess Catherine and placing the late Queen Elizabeth II's top-secret plain band ring into her hands. Internal sources confirmed that the fuse was lit after William and Anne's alliance unleashed 2 pieces of ironclad evidence, a dossier exposing Camilla for embezzling millions of pounds from the Duchy of Cornwall charities, and a medical report detailing Catherine's mental exhaustion under years of toxic media attacks masterminded by her stepmother. Backed into an absolute corner by his son's ruthless ultimatum, the king was forced to choose the survival of the throne and let go of his lifelong companion. Can Camilla survive and find a way to strike back when all palace keycards are deactivated, courtiers turn their backs, and her husband cuts off her phone signal for 2 full days and nights? What new power dynamic will be established as Catherine officially takes charge of the dynasty, while Prince William continues to orchestrate everything from the shadows? Hidden behind the desk lamps at Clarence House, Camilla quietly established a dark media network. For decades, she survived not through the affection of the people, but by her knack for leaking toxic stories to destroy her rivals within the family. Camilla's ultimate target was Princess Catherine, whose overwhelming public adoration left Camilla feeling permanently cast into the shadows. The fuse was lit by the 2018 bridesmaid dress dispute behind closed doors. In the dressing room that day, it was Catherine who was the actual victim, treated so harshly that she broke down in helpless tears amidst the white silk. But Camilla refused to let that truth stand. She picked up the phone and called a tabloid editor directly that very night, masterminding a complete inversion of black and white. The next morning, Camilla's malicious trap successfully sprung as the headline, "Meghan left in tears by Kate's coldness," dominated the front pages of every major newspaper. Catherine was painted as an arrogant bully, forced to bear the storm of public outrage in silence at Windsor Castle. Meanwhile, Camilla stood by the window of Clarence House, gloating, as she watched journalists surround and isolate her daughter-in-law, officially igniting a life-or-death war. Camilla's greed knew no bounds, and it grew even more ruthless as Queen Elizabeth II's health entered its final months of decline. As the revered queen lay on her sickbed tormented by physical pain, Camilla showed not a shred of pity or respect. On the contrary, she saw this as a golden opportunity to execute a large-scale power grab. Camilla was like a vulture circling the skies, waiting for the body to grow cold before swooping down to tear into the prey, seizing everything she could before the new reign began. Day after day, Camilla aggressively lobbied behind the facade of fake hospital visits. She met directly with senior courtiers, using sweet talk and outright threats to coerce them into preparing for the expansion of her ceremonial titles as soon as Charles ascended the throne. Camilla wanted to ensure that she would not merely be a queen consort in name only, but the holder of supreme decision-making powers within the palace, bypassing the traditional protocols of the House of Windsor. Princess Anne witnessed the entirety of this cruelty and disrespect from her sister-in-law. Late at night, after Camilla left the Queen's sick room with a calculating expression and a satisfied smile, Anne would walk in to find a heartbreaking scene. The great Queen of England lay curled up on the large bed, tears silently rolling down her wrinkled, exhausted cheeks. The late Queen had suffered profound psychological damage from the sheer brazenness of Camilla, who made no secret of her desire to erase the shadow of the past. Anne could only sit by the bedside, clutching her mother's frail hand, as the 2 royal women wept in silence, helpless against the dark conspiracies enveloping the palace. But Camilla's greatest crime was only truly exposed when Prince William ordered a covert systemic audit of all operational funds of the Duchy of Cornwall. William had long suspected unusual losses amounting to millions of pounds within the family's charitable accounts. As his trusted financial experts dug deep into the secret ledgers, they uncovered a horrifying truth. Camilla had continuously and covertly diverted massive royal charitable funds, money contributed by the public, to help the impoverished, sick children and the less fortunate across the kingdom. This dirty money was sophisticatedly funneled by Camilla through a network of intermediary accounts to build a massive personal financial empire and cultivate a self-serving network of personal patronage. She used the funds siphoned from unfortunate lives to buy the loyalty of courtiers and pay off dark media forces to protect her and attack anyone who dared threaten her position. It was a filthy base and completely immoral crime, trampling on the honor of the Windsor bloodline and the trust of the kingdom's people. While Camilla triumphantly enjoyed wealth built on the backs of the poor, Catherine bore the heaviest consequences of this toxic psychological warfare. The brutal isolation inside the palace, the relentless media attacks pulled by Camilla's strings, combined with King Charles III's indifference, pushed Catherine into a state of severe exhaustion. She could not eat, she could not sleep. Every passing day was a horrific psychological torture for her. Close attendants witnessed Catherine losing weight at an alarming rate, her face gaunt and her eyes ringed with dark circles from lack of sleep. The Welsh gold wedding band on her finger became so loose it nearly slipped off whenever she moved. Catherine frequently locked her door, sitting with her head buried by the corner of the bed, weeping in secret for hours to release her resentment. She felt like an honorable prisoner, surrounded by liars with absolutely no way out. Catherine's pain and exhaustion could not escape the watchful eyes of Prince William. Every time he saw his wife emerge from a dark room with a pale face and frail shoulders, his heart wrenched with rage and agony. He realized that if he continued to remain silent and adhere to the archaic customs of the palace, the woman he loved would be completely devoured by that wicked woman. William knew he had to act not with futile arguments, but with a ruthless campaign to hunt down evidence and uproot the cancer named Camilla from their lives forever. The campaign to overthrow Camilla was planned by William and Princess Anne, with absolute caution, operating entirely in the shadows to avoid alerting the Queen's network of inside informants. William understood that to bring down a woman as deeply rooted in the system as Camilla, he could not rely on mere allegations. He had to hold tangible physical evidence, ironclad proofs that left the opponent unable to deny them before anyone. He transformed his private study into a miniature investigation center, applying rigorous methods to gather documentation. The first piece of physical evidence William collected was the illicit financial dossier from the Cornwall audit. He spent weeks personally cross-referencing every single money transfer order and every forged signature by Camilla on charity withdrawal documents. The thick volumes containing concrete proof of the dirty money trail were securely locked away in a high-security combination safe. Every figure in that dossier was clear proof of the Queen's despicable thievery, demonstrating how she used the money of the poor to feed her personal ambitions. The second piece of evidence, and the one that caused William the most heartbreak and fury, was the top-secret medical report on Catherine's health. William requested the family's private doctors to compile a detailed file chronicling all the physical and psychological trauma Catherine had endured over the years under Camilla's shadow. The report explicitly detailed her severe weight loss symptoms of nervous exhaustion due to prolonged media pressure and evidence of her suffering panic attacks in silence. This was physical proof that Camilla's cruelty had crossed the line, becoming a systematic psychological torture that drained Kate completely. While William gathered financial and medical evidence in London, Princess Anne assumed the role of field detective at Windsor Castle and Clarence House. With her thorough familiarity with every corner and her authority as a paternal aunt, Anne began a covert surveillance campaign against Camilla's informants. She silently recorded work schedules and unusual late-night meetings between the Queen's trusted attendants and tabloid journalists in obscured areas of the palace. Anne moved quietly through dark corridors, her sharp eyes missing not a single suspicious action. Camilla's arrogance was her greatest weakness in this war. Believing she completely controlled King Charles III and the media, Camilla remained smug and complacent, continuing to appear at public events with a radiant smile and luxurious outfits bought with charity funds. She had no idea that her every move, phone call, and financial transaction were under the strict surveillance of William and Anne. An invisible net was tightening around the Queen's neck, without her knowledge ready to tear down the empire of lies she had painstakingly constructed. Late at night in a secret room in the basement of Windsor Castle, William and Anne met to synthesize their investigative findings. On a large wooden table, the illicit financial dossier and Catherine's medical report lay side by side under dim lighting. Anne looked at her nephew, her eyes reflecting the resolve of someone who had endured more than enough of the injustices Camilla inflicted upon their family. They knew the time to strike the decisive blow was near, but to ensure absolute victory, they needed an ultimate weapon, a decree carrying a supreme weight that transcended even the current power of King Charles III. William and Anne's perseverance finally led them to a shocking discovery late one night when they decided to conduct a deep security search within the archives of Windsor Castle. This was the depository for personal documents and the most intimate secrets of past monarchs, a place completely sealed off from the outside world. Using a security key held by Anne since the late Queen's time, the two entered the dark room, thick with the scent of old paper. They began searching through locked iron boxes, hoping to find a decisive weapon for the overthrow. After hours of silent searching, William's hand brushed against a small iron box hidden behind ancient documents in the deepest corner of the archive. The box was sealed with royal wax bearing the personal cipher of the late Queen Elizabeth II, accompanied by a strictly coded inscription. As William carefully broke the wax and opened the lid, he found a secret letter written in his grandmother's familiar yet trembling handwriting, penned just weeks before her passing. This secret letter was the ultimate piece of evidence, a decree from beyond the grave containing the horrifying truth of what transpired during the Queen's final days. The letter's content was a scathing indictment, a chilling warning from the late Queen against Camilla. Writing with utter clarity amidst immense physical agony, the late Queen explicitly branded Camilla as the core threat to the survival of the monarchy. She denounced Camilla's brazen lobbying actions while she lay dying and expressed deep disappointment in Charles for failing to protect the family's honor from his wife's greed. But the most shocking revelation lay in the next part of the letter. The late Queen completely bypassed Charles and William to name Catherine as the dynasty's ultimate protective shield, owing to her integrity, public trust, and unwavering resolve never to smear others. The secret letter was not merely a warning, it was an official mandate entrusted by the late Queen specifically to Princess Anne. She tasked Anne with choosing the most appropriate moment once the evidence was complete to execute a campaign to strip Camilla of her power and banish the woman from the lives of the Windsor family to protect Catherine and the future of the reign. This decree was legally coded, transforming William and Anne's battle from an act of rebellion into a righteous mission approved by the greatest monarch in contemporary history. Holding the letter in his hands, his grandmother's words seemed to infuse William with boundless strength. He looked over at Anne. His aunt was also choking back tears as she reread her mother's final words. They realized this was no coincidence, but a design of fate. The late Queen had foreseen everything. She knew what Camilla would do and had left this key for them. Armed with 3 ironclad pieces of evidence, the corruption dossier, Catherine's medical report, and the late Queen's secret letter, William and Anne's alliance, was ready for an all-out assault. They carefully tucked the secret letter into a coat pocket and left the archive as the clock struck 3 in the morning. Outside, the rain continued to pour heavily, as if seeking to wash away the stains behind the palace doors. William looked toward Clarence House, where Camilla slept soundly in her complacency, utterly unaware that tomorrow's dawn would mark the beginning of the worst nightmare of her life. The death trap was set, and no force could save the reigning queen once the mandate from beyond the grave was activated. The air inside the regal bedroom at Clarence House grew thick and suffocating as the pendulum clock struck exactly midnight. Queen Camilla sat before her large gilded vanity mirror, leisurely removing strings of pearls from her neck. Suddenly, the ebony door burst open without any knock or warning from the security detail. Striding into the room was Princess Anne, the sharp-witted aunt of the Windsor bloodline, her face as cold and solemn as a judge emerging from the shadows. In her hand was no celebratory gift, but the thick, illicit financial dossier from the Duchy of Cornwall, the ironclad evidence exposing the theft of charity funds. Anne marched straight to the vanity table. Without a single pleasantry, she slammed the dossier onto the glass tabletop with brute force. The impact caused Camilla's expensive glass perfume bottles to slide, overturn, and crash into one another. Camilla jolted to her feet, her face a mix of shock and rage, intending to use her title as the reigning queen to rebuke her sister-in-law's disrespect. She pointed toward the door, preparing to scream for her attendants to expel Anne. But Anne's icy gaze and resolute actions locked the words squarely in her throat. Anne used her thin yet powerful fingers to flip open the very first page of the dossier, turning sheets of paper filled with transaction lines highlighted in red ink. It was undeniable proof that Camilla had secretly diverted millions of pounds from funds intended for the poor into personal accounts. Beside them lay copies of Camilla's own forged signatures on withdrawal vouchers. Looking her sister-in-law dead in the eye, Anne declared in a low, razor-sharp voice that all her despicable actions had been exposed, and from this moment on, Camilla was no longer welcome in this family. Camilla stumbled backward, her lips trembling, her arrogance utterly collapsing before the tangible evidence displayed on the table. At that exact moment, in an isolated room at Windsor Castle, a shocking scene unprecedented in contemporary royal history was unfolding in absolute silence. King Charles III appeared in rumpled civilian attire, an old sweater and coarse trousers, devoid of any royal regalia, insignia, or the velvet robes of a monarch. He sat slumped in a simple wooden chair, his aging hands trembling violently, as he turned the pages of the top-secret medical report on Catherine that Prince William had just placed before him. Every line in the medical report was like a knife plunging into the old king's conscience. The document detailed Catherine's alarmingly severe weight loss signs of nervous exhaustion and the physical and mental trauma she had endured for years under Camilla's shadow. Every instance where Catherine had to lock her door, to weep in secret every time she collapsed from media attacks, orchestrated by her stepmother, was fully recorded by private physicians. Charles looked up at his daughter-in-law, who stood quietly beside William, her face pale, but her eyes radiating the steadfast resolve of a person of integrity. The suppression of years of regret and guilt meant Charles could no longer remain standing. Before his eldest son, who stood majestic like a stone statue in the dimness, the king of the realm slowly dropped to his knees on the cold stone floor directly in front of Catherine. Bowing his head, tears rolled down his haggard, deeply wrinkled face. Charles lifted Catherine's frail hand and, with total reverence and penitence, placed late Queen Elizabeth II's secure plain band ring into her palm. This was the very ring associated with the late Queen's most private grief and solitude, after Prince Philip's passing a physical testament to the absolute trust of her predecessor. Charles gently squeezed Catherine's hand, his voice choking with bitter sobs as he uttered a belated confession. She was the only future for this dynasty, a future he had utterly failed to protect due to his own weakness. Catherine stood in silence, feeling the chill of the secure plain ring touching her skin. All the resentment, the pain, and the months spent in brutal isolation seemed completely washed away. She needed no loud declaration. The plain ring in her hand and the kneeling posture of the king officially established her position at the supreme moral center of the House of Windsor. William stepped forward from the darkness, placing a firm hand on his wife's shoulder, his gaze unmoving despite his father's collapse. He knew the midnight judgment had achieved its ultimate goal. The forces of justice did not require violence or loud arguments. They brought down their opponent by catching her dirty crimes red-handed and using real trauma to awaken the king's conscience. The trap had sprung completely. Camilla stood exposed at Clarence House, and Charles had surrendered unconditionally, handing the security key over to the next generation. The moment Princess Anne turned her back and walked out, leaving the illicit financial dossier on the table, sheer panic choked Camilla's heart. The woman whose crimes had just been laid bare rushed to the phone on her desk, her trembling fingers dialing King Charles III's private line. For decades, Camilla believed that Charles's blind love and emotional dependence were the ultimate shield that could rescue her from any filthy mire. The phone rang long, drawn-out rings, echoing through the silence of Clarence House, but the other end remained frighteningly silent. Camilla hung up and dialed again repeatedly frantically. Dozens, then hundreds of calls were made through the late night and into the following days. Her phone screen showed only the notification that the call went unanswered. She had no idea that in the king's private study at Windsor Castle, Charles's personal phone lay on the ebony desk, its screen continuously lighting up and flashing Camilla's name, yet no one touched it. Charles could only sit frozen, his eyes glued to the phone screen in absolute helplessness and profound agony. Standing right beside the desk was Prince William, his face utterly expressionless, as cold as an iceberg. In William's hand was not an administrative document, but a ruthless ultimatum incarnate. He held the file containing the entirety of Camilla's corruption and theft of funds from the poor, ready to trigger its direct release onto global media platforms. William had backed Charles into a flawless political trap with no exit if the king softened and pressed the button to answer or made any move to intervene to protect Camilla. William would instantly expose this entire filthy truth to the public. Should that happen, a wave of public fury would instantly submerge Charles III's throne, and the dynasty's reputation would be completely shattered before it could even take shape. Charles looked at his eldest son, who stood in the shadows orchestrating the entire situation, and understood he had no choice. The aging king was forced to make the most brutal decision of his life, sacrifice the wife of his bosom to trade for the survival of the throne and the Windsor bloodline. He chose silence, leaving Camilla's calls to dissolve into a bottomless void. For the next 2 days and nights, Camilla was completely isolated within the vast expanse of Clarence House, her communication with the outside royal world entirely cut off. As panic morphed into despair, Camilla ran frantically through the corridors, attempting to seek help from the senior courtiers she had once groomed with dirty charity cash. But a harsh reality manifested before her. The attitude of everyone in the palace had changed terrifyingly overnight. Courtiers who once bowed obsequiously now actively avoided the queen's gaze. They feigned being busy with their own tasks or bluntly refused to execute her orders with a cold, distant demeanor. Camilla realized the personal patronage network she had painstakingly built with stolen funds dissolved the instant Anne threw the black file onto the table. The villain who once gloated complacently now tasted the bitter medicine of brutal isolation, turned into a phantom no one wished to touch in her very own home. Shame and fear tore at Camilla's soul, causing her to break down, completely slumping onto the cold stone floor, her luxurious makeup smeared by helpless tears. The dawn of the third day arrived, bringing a chilling silence from Windsor Castle. Camilla looked at her completely silent phone, understanding that her weak-willed husband had thrown up his hands and surrendered to William's pressure. The signal-blocking trap of the Prince of Wales did not merely cut off Camilla's retreat. It entirely broke her will to resist turning the woman who once manipulated an entire dynasty into a pathetic loser, isolated and stripped bare before the approaching ruthless punishment. The expulsion of Queen Camilla was ordered to be executed at 2 a.m, a time when the entire city of London was fast asleep. Prince William's private security force, in coordination with Princess Anne, quickly sealed off all entrances and exits of Clarence House. There were no luxury royal vehicles waiting in the Grand Hall, no red carpet, and no formal farewells. Escorted by 2 security officers, Camilla was led out of her room and forced to exit through the dingy side door behind the building, a passage strictly reserved for servants, cleaning staff, and the disposal of household waste. Camilla walked in disheveled clothes, her hair uncombed, her head bowed low to the ground to avoid the contemptuous stares of the servants standing in line watching in silence. The moment her feet crossed the threshold of the side door, a crisp click echoed from the building's electronic locking system. Camilla's palace access card was officially and permanently deactivated. Simultaneously, her most trusted attendant, the one who had aided in leaking defamatory information about Catherine to tabloids, received an on-the-spot dismissal notice and was escorted off palace grounds without being permitted to take any personal belongings. By William's ironclad command, Camilla was nominally downgraded to a common citizen for 48 hours. During this period, she was entirely stripped of security protection, denied legal representation, and strictly prohibited from making any public statements. The ruthless punishment and public humiliation continued in the Queen's Gallery inside Windsor Castle. Under Princess Anne's on-site direction, palace guards proceeded to rip Camilla's massive oil portrait down from the Wall of Honor. The gilded frame crashed heavily onto the floor, shattering, before being dragged away by guards and tossed into a refuse storeroom deep in the basement. Right in that vacant space, a radiant and majestic portrait of Princess Catherine was hung up, signifying a complete overhaul of the power structure within the House of Windsor. Although under national law, Camilla retained the title of Queen Consort for public appearances to avoid complex administrative procedures, in reality, her entire underlying power structure had been ruthlessly amputated. Her title was now nothing more than a voiceless cage, an empty shell stripped of any practical value. Camilla was placed under strict house arrest, confined to a remote estate outside London, living the life of an exile in the alienation of the entire family. In stark contrast to Camilla's downfall, a new order was established around Catherine with absolute solidity. Catherine's private office officially took over all the most vital patronages, assuming control to filter every piece of correspondence and documentation before it reached King Charles III, while directly commanding senior palace courtiers. Princess Anne remained by her side day and night, acting as a living shield to protect Catherine's safety and honor against any underground forces. Meanwhile, Prince William stood entirely in the shadows of Windsor Castle. Looking through the glass window, he witnessed the new order operating flawlessly under his control. William needed no flamboyant titles at this moment. He was the orchestrator of the entire new power architecture, placing his beloved wife at the supreme moral center of the Windsor dynasty. The forces of justice had won a spectacular victory The villain had paid the most devastating price for her sins, ending an era of rule by deception and opening a proud new chapter. Yet as he stood alone in the dark room looking toward his father's empty chair, William understood that this victory came with a brutal trade-off. The familial bond between him and Charles had suffered a deep fracture that could never be healed. The king was now merely a lonely man living in regret and fearing his own biological son. Catherine's peace had been established, but it was built upon the silent, shattered remnants of blood relations, leaving a cold and haunting echo behind the throne's splendor. Was King Charles III's silence and letting go over those 2 days and nights a permanent surrender? Or will the embers of resentment in the lonely king's heart quietly flare up to exact revenge on his own son? And Camilla, a schemer who manipulated the media for decades, will she truly accept a slow death inside a voiceless cage? Or is this merely the calm before an even more terrifying storm? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.